The Cabin Guest. I was traveling alone through Romania. Crossing the Carpathian Mountains, I decided to spend the night in an unmanned mountain cabin along the trail. The villagers had warned me, never make a sound in the mountains at night. Something might come. They refused to explain further, but I dismissed it as local superstition. I continued on my way to the cabin. The cabin was simple but solid. Stone walls, a wooden door, creaking floors. There was enough firewood for the stove, and after a simple meal, I lit the fire and spread out my map. I planned my route for the next day, then crawled into my sleeping bag early, but deep into the night, a sound woke me up. Creak, creak. Footsteps in the hallway. Someone was inside the cabin. That wasn't possible. This cabin was deep in the mountains, far from any town or village. I held my breath, listening. Creak, creak. Slow, deliberate steps, moving through the cabin. This wasn't the wind. Someone was walking inside. Gripping my flashlight, I slowly slid out of my sleeping bag. I aimed the light toward the hallway. No one was there. But on the old wooden floor, wet footprints, barefoot prints. Why wet? This was a dry mountain. A chill ran down my spine. Someone had been walking inside. I needed to leave. Now. Then thud. Right outside my door, something stopped. I froze. A shadow stretched under the door. Someone was standing there, watching. Who's there? I forced the words out. No reply, but the doorknob began to turn. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I shut off my flashlight and slipped back into my sleeping bag, barely breathing. The door creaked open. Scree. Soft footsteps. Slow. Something entered the room. It stopped beside my bed. I squeezed my eyes shut. I couldn't look. Couldn't move. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Then the footsteps turned back. They moved down the hall, fading into the cabin. Silence. I was still alive, but I couldn't move. If I did, I felt like it would come back. At sunrise, I finally sat up. The cabin was still. I packed my things quickly, eager to leave. But before stepping outside, I hesitated. I checked the hallway floor. The footprints were gone, as if they had never existed. Back in the village, I told the old men what had happened. One of them spoke quietly. That was a lost soul of the mountain. For centuries, it was believed that the spirits of those who perished in the mountains still wandered the cabins at night. If they sensed the presence of the living, they would try to take them. You were lucky to escape. A deep shudder ran through me. What I had felt in that cabin, it wasn't human. I never returned to the Romanian mountains, but sometimes, in my dreams, I feel something standing behind a door, waiting, and slowly turning the doorknob. The Distorted Festival. I was traveling through Ethiopia when I stumbled upon a small village festival. It wasn't in any guidebook, and there were no tourists, just locals dressed in traditional attire, beating drums and dancing under the open sky. A rare, authentic experience. I took out my camera and snapped a few shots. That's when I felt it. Someone was watching me. At the center of the festival, one man wasn't dancing. He was wrapped in a long robe, his face covered by a black cloth. Even though his eyes were hidden, I could feel his gaze locked onto me. A strange unease settled in my chest. I turned to a nearby villager. "What is this festival about?" The elderly man smiled. "This is a welcoming ceremony." "A welcome for what?" "For those who come from far away." His words made little sense, but I chuckled and nodded. Then, boom, boom. The drums stopped. The villagers' smiles disappeared. The air became heavy, suffocating. The robed man slowly stood up. Then he walked toward me. No one else moved. It was as if they were waiting for something. The man stopped a few feet away and spread his arms, as if inviting me. What? I took a step back. The old man beside me whispered, his voice barely audible. Leave now. What? This festival is not for you. A shiver ran down my spine. I turned back to the villagers. Every single one of them was staring at me now. Their faces were blank, expressionless. I think I should go, I muttered. I turned toward the path out of the village. The moment I did, boom, boom. The drums began playing again, but no one was hitting them. I looked over my shoulder. The villagers all tilted their heads at the exact same angle. Their movements were too synchronized, too unnatural. I bolted. The only way out was a long dirt path leading away from the village. Behind me, the drums grew louder. Boom, 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 boom. And then laughter, twisted, overlapping voices that sounded like both joy and agony. I turned back, and no one was there. Relief flooded my chest, but then I saw it. Standing in the center of the festival grounds was me. A second me stood where I had just been. He was staring directly at me. I couldn't move. My other self opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His mouth was just a hollow black void. And then he reached out toward me. My vision went dark. I woke up alone. The village was gone. There was nothing but an abandoned clearing, dust swirling in the wind. Had it been a dream? No, because my camera was still clutched in my hand. With shaking fingers, I checked the last photo I had taken. It showed the villagers encircling me, and in the middle, I was there. I left Ethiopia soon after. When I tried researching the festival, I found nothing. That village didn't exist, but one thing I know for certain, that festival was for me. And if I hadn't run, would I still be here now? Or is the one standing here really me? The Sunken City. I had been traveling through central Vietnam, wandering through ancient towns, bustling markets, and riverside villages. Hoi An was beautiful, with its lantern-lit streets and floating candles drifting on the Thu Bon River. But after days of sightseeing, I craved something different, something off the beaten path. That's how I ended up in a remote fishing village, far from the usual tourist spots. The village was simple. Rows of stilt houses, wooden boats bobbing along the shore, and the smell of fresh seafood grilling over charcoal. I sat at a food stall, drinking iced coffee, thick with condensed milk, when an old fisherman spoke to me. "You are not from here," he said. I smiled. "Just passing through." He stared at me for a moment, then said, "You should not go to the lake." I hadn't mentioned a lake. I leaned forward. "Why not?" His eyes flickered toward the distance. "There is a city beneath the water," he murmured. "A place that once lived, but now waits." According to the old man, the lake was once a thriving city, a center of trade. But centuries ago, floods swallowed it whole. The people left, he said, but something remained. He told me that some of the old buildings still jutted from the surface. "You can go if you want," he added. Then, after a pause, "But do not stay past sunset." I rented a small boat and set out across the lake. The water was unnaturally still. Even as I rowed, the surface barely rippled. After a while, I saw them. Crumbled rooftops, stone pillars, fragments of a city, half swallowed by the water. I drifted closer, fascinated. The thought that an entire town lay beneath me sent a chill down my spine. I lifted my camera, focused, and pressed the shutter. Click. The sound echoed across the water. And then, behind me, something moved. I turned sharply. A ripple spread across the lake, like something had just submerged. I squinted. Between the ruined structures, something was shifting. A figure. At first, I thought it was my reflection. But no, it was walking, underwater. My breath caught. The figure took slow, deliberate steps, moving against the current. It wasn't floating, it wasn't swimming, it was walking through the drowned city. Then, it turned its head toward me. I couldn't move. My body knew before my mind did. It had no face, just a black void, empty and staring. I gripped the oars, my hands slick with sweat. Then, hands broke the surface. Pale, reaching. Dozens of them. They emerged from the water like blossoms unfurling in slow motion. I couldn't breathe. Something gripped my boat. The wood groaned as the weight of unseen hands dragged it down. I lurched forward, almost tipping over. I had to get out. I rowed desperately, but the water fought back. It felt heavier, thicker, pulling me in. Beneath me the figures rose, faceless, silent, watching. Then one of them floated to the surface, right next to my boat. It tilted its head, a perfect imitation of me, and then it climbed aboard. The world twisted. My vision blurred. I couldn't tell if I was in the boat or in the water anymore. I gasped. Water filled my lungs. No, I wasn't in the boat. I was sinking. The last thing I saw was the city below. Half-buried buildings, figures standing among them, and all of them were looking up. I woke up coughing on the shore. The lake was still again. The boat drifted, untouched. But my body felt heavy, like something had been holding me down. I stood up shakily and left. I never looked back.